Greetings and welcome, everyone. My name is Lokita Maka. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Thank you so much, guys. We are back with plant studies, agricultural sciences, grade 11. I promise the grade 11s that I will be back very soon because we have to catch up. I know I have been neglecting them, but guys, your mom is here. I'm back, guys. So in this session, we're gonna discuss two units: absorption and storage of water and nutrients. Then we'll also look at mineral nutrition that covers micro elements as well as macro elements. So please stay tuned. Grab your pen and paper, relax, have some water. Remember, we'll be covering 2 weeks work in just less than an hour. So make sure that you take your time to listen properly and remember that this is basically just a summary, but something that is useful for you to understand all the concepts that you have covered in 2 weeks. And now remember, I only focus on topics that your teachers have already done. So I'm not going to do something that you haven't been taught in class yet. So this is actually just a reminder, just a refresher course, and bearing in mind that some of us are auditory learners, so they learn best when they hear the concepts. So this is also to accommodate those learners. And also in this session, I've used more pictures. So this is also to accommodate learners who understand things best when they see the visuals. So yeah, this is basically for everyone. Please gather here, share this with people that you know they need it most. Share with your teachers, share with your siblings, share with your classmates. Don't be jealous, guys. Please make sure you come here, share the link, share with everyone you know needs it. Share with emerging farmers. New farmers need this knowledge. So yeah, anyway, let's get started. Now, let's look at the importance and functions of water in plants. Now, remember, we said we're going to start with absorption as well as storage of water and nutrients, right? So, why is water important? So, what are the functions of water? So, that is the question that we should be asking ourselves at this point in time. Why is water important? Now, remember, even as human beings, we need water to survive. So, if you look at the first picture here, there is seed germination there. There is seed germination there. So, water is important for seed germination, and also water is important for seed growth. That is what the second picture is depicting. Now, water transports nutrients from the soil to the rest of the plants. Now that's what makes the seeds to germinate. That what makes the seeds or the plants now to grow, right? It also transports the products of photosynthesis to where they are needed in the plant. Now remember, photosynthesis is very important in plants. Now this is the important metabolic process in plants, right? While you are thinking of other important functions or importances of plants, now try to write them down or just think as we go along in this session, right? Now, again, water gives structural supports to plants by filling the vacuoles in plant cells. Now, remember we had talked about vacuoles. That was in grade 8. Let me not say grade 10 because, yes, in grade 10 you have done this, but let me just take you back to grade 8. When we're doing plant cells and animal cells, the difference is there. And we had said that the vacuole in plants is larger than that one in animals if it does exist in that particular animal. And why is that so? Because it helps now with the structural support. So now this water gives structural support to the plants by filling vacuoles in the cells, right? Now, again, plant is water is important in plants for temperature regulation. So it cools the plants down. Now remember, even when you are thirsty or when you are feeling hot, if the temperatures outside is like 35 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees, you will need a lot of water to cool down. You will need a pool to go and swim so that you can cool down. You will need a fan so that you can cool down. So that's the same thing even in plants. It helps to regulate temperature. So again, water provides a medium for metabolic processes such as photosynthesis and respiration. So it also acts as a solvent for nutrients, and it plays a huge role in chemical reaction as well as reproduction. Moving forward, let's look at the movement of water now from the soil to the roots of the plant. I hope this picture is clear. Please let me know if it's clear. You can see, but if you cannot see, you can just Google one. Then I also found this on Google. I do not hold any copyright on this picture, and um, yeah, this is not my own picture. I just downloaded it from the internet. So now, what happens? How does water now move from the soil to the roots, right? So plants now, you by now you understand that they get their water and nutrients from the soil, and they get them through the roots. So the roots are really important, guys. Without the roots, the plants are just as good as dead. Same way with us as human beings, without our roots, then we can't be able to know ourselves, who we are. So you need to know your roots. So that's basically what it means. Even if there's a problem, you need to find the root cause, right? So it all starts there, right? So now the root hairs now of these roots, they absorb the water and the mineral salts that are in the soil. And this can be done either passively or actively. So the water can be actively absorbed or passively absorbed. So if it is passively absorbed now, this now is where this is done by either osmosis or diffusion. So there is no energy required there. But if it's actively absorbed, then it requires cellular energy and sometimes, guys, also a carrier molecule for the nutrients by carrying the cell membranes. But now let's look at this osmosis and this diffusion we are talking about. Now, again, this takes us to grade 8. I love this because now you're in grade 11, but the information that you learned a long time ago is still useful. You still need this information. Okay, now what is diffusion? You're asking yourself. What is osmosis? Now, if you're looking at osmosis, now this is where the water molecules pass through a semi permeable membrane or a differentially permeable membrane, moving from high water potential to a low water potential. So what will happen? The water will always move from high to a low water potential. Right. Now, what is diffusion now? So diffusion basically is the movement now of molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Now again, grade 8, you did diffusion. A smell can diffuse from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So now the molecules, they diffuse. That's why you have things like a diffuser, because some of the diffusers, they diffuse scent, the smell, beautiful smell, but sometimes not a quite pleasant smell, right? So sometimes smell cannot be pleasant. For example, a smell from the shoes. So if you're somebody who likes to wear your shoes without socks, or maybe your shoes get wet, and then you get to wear those, then there will be a diffusion of smell there. So there will be diffusion of these molecules from a point of high concentration to a point of lower concentration, right? So now, looking at diffusion, what will happen? Now, these molecules will diffuse gradiently, right? And they will continue until now these 2 points, that one of low concentration and that one of high concentration, um, are the same. And then this is basically when they reach equilibrium, the dynamic equilibrium, right? So now, what will happen now in the plants? Remember, now we're talking about osmosis, right? We said that the water now moves. These water molecules, they pass through a differentially permeable membrane, moving from a high water potential to a low water potential. That is the definition. So that's how water always moves from high to low, right? So what will happen now? The water will move from the soil to the vacuoles, right? That are in the root hairs, right? Then from there, from these vacuoles, the water now will move to the xylem, what we call the xylem, right? Going to touch on this on the next slide. And then from there, upwards into the xylem vessels, then into the stems of the leaves, right? So there are two concepts that I want you to look at, right? When it comes to this movement, right? Or this diffusion or osmosis, right? When it comes to the movement of water, there are two concepts that I want you to look at. Then write the spellings on the comment section below. The hypertonic solution as well as the hypotonic solution. So when we're talking about the hypertonic solution, this is a solution that contains mainly dissolved substances. But with the hypotonic solution, this is the solution that contains few dissolved substances, right? Now let's look at the movement of water in plants and into the atmosphere, right? So now what happens? Remember we said the water moves from the roots to the stems and then to the leaves, right? Then we said that the xylem, water actually moves upwards into the xylem vessels, into and the stems to the leaves, right? Okay, we've mentioned that. So now what will happen? There's what we call a xylem tissue in those in the xylem, right? Now the xylem tissue is responsible for transporting water from the roots to the leaves, right? Now, this water that we are talking about, remember it comes from the soil. So this water contains important minerals. It contains important nutrients, right? So this water now can either be apoplastic. This movement of water can either be apoplastic or it can be symplastic. So now what is the difference between the two? Now, with apoplastic, this basically means that the water is moving along the outer edge of the plant cell. So, in other words, it moves via the intercellular spaces and the cell walls of the plant cells. So, it moves on the outer area, right? But now, with symplastic movement, what happens? Now, this movement of water through the cell membranes and also the vacuoles from one cell to another cell. Then now what will happen, right? Now, when it gets to the leaves, right, moving now to the atmosphere, what will happen is the water now will evaporate from the leaf to the atmosphere through the small openings of the leaf, which we call the stomata, right? Now, this type of process is called transpiration. So basically, transpiration is the movement of water or the water that escapes now from the pores under the leaves, right? So it escapes now through the stomata. Now, stomata is the small openings on the leaf, right? So in some plants now, what will happen is that the water can be lost as small droplets through what we call hydatomes, right? Now, these are special structures basically on the edge of the leaves of the plant. Now, this particular process, now this is not transpiration, but this one is what we call guttation or sweating. And yes, plants do sweat as well, right? Now, remember, plants are living organisms. So there are biotic factors, there are biotic components. Now, this again takes you to that knowledge that you have from previous years, right? And then now there are forces that influence the upward movement of water in plants. Now, what are these forces? Make sure you write them down, right? What are these forces? The first one is the root pressure. The second one is the capillarity. The third force, adhesion force, cohesion force, as well as transpiration suction. Now let's look at them. What is the root pressure? Now think about it. What is roots? What is a root? What is pressure? Right? This obviously just general knowledge, right? So now this is basically the pressure that pushes up water in the xylem vessels of the stem, such as the water move up into the roots. And then we've got capillarity. So this is basically the spontaneous rise of water in the xylem vessels. Then we've got another force that influences the movement of water in plants, which is the adhesion force. So this is the force of attraction between two different types of molecule. But it's different to the cohesion force because the cohesion force is the force of attraction between molecules of the same kind. And then we've got another force, which is the transpiration suction. Now, transpiration suction, what happens now? Now, the transpirations one lowers the water potential in the leaves. Now, remember, we said this is when now the water vapor escapes to the atmosphere. So this process lowers the potential, the water potential in the leaves as compared to the stem and the roots. So now the water that is available in the leaves is not the same as that one that is um, available in the stems and roots. Now, if you look at this picture, one of the leaves here is covered in a plastic bag. So this is something that you can try to also test this, right? So if you cover now the one of the leaves, you will notice that the plastic bag will be foggy. Why? Because some of the water from the leaves get escaped. So now it will be foggy because this water now cannot escape to the atmosphere. So it remains now in this plastic bag. So this is something that you can try on your own. Right? Now, all these forces from your root pressure, capillarity, adhesion force, cohesion force, transpiration suction together cause water and nutrients to move, right? How? Via osmosis now in an uninterrupted flow through the roots to the leaves, right? Now, this type of flow, this movement of water and nutrients, we call it the osmotic flow, right? Note that down, write it and underline, then define it. What is the osmotic flow? So this is basically the movement of water and nutrients via osmosis in an uninterrupted flow through the roots to the leaves. That is the simplest definition I can give you. Nothing else, guys. If you want something else, I can dance. I don't know. Okay, let's continue. Now, how are plants adapted to reduce the rate of transpiration? Now, let's look at the adaptation of plants to reduce transpiration rate. Now, remember, we said plants need water. But now, when we're talking about transpiration, now this is the escape of water to the atmosphere. We don't want that water to move to the atmosphere. So, how can these plants now adapt so that they can reduce transpiration rate or the rate of transpiration, right? So now imagine in an area where it's dry, like there is less rainfall, like in a Karoo, in a desert. Now think about this, like think about this adaptation in that sense, right? So now remember, we said now these plants need water, like continuous supply of water to be available for them to survive. And by all means, they need to try to reduce transpiration. By all means, they need to limit the loss of water. So now in dry areas or in dry regions, the plants adapt to this reduction of transpiration rate by one, having a waxy layer on the surface, having a sunken stomata. We have mentioned what a stomata is. Hairy leaves. Now also tell me what is like scientific term for hairy leaves. Small leaf surfaces, also tell me that what that means, right? So then those are the ways that plants can adapt to reduce transpiration rate, right? Let's continue, guys. We don't have time. Now remember, we are trying to cover 2 weeks work in just one session. I hope you are still with me. Hope you are still enjoying the session. And yes, it can be boring, but it's important because you need this to write your exams. You need this to pass. You need to listen to me so that you can pass. So, again, please share this with your loved ones. Sit down, write the questions that you have, post them on the comment section below, then we can engage. If needs be, we can even have a live session one of these days. So look at this picture here. Tell me what happens. The movement of products of photosynthesis. What happens there? Remember now, the simplest definition of photosynthesis is that is photosynthesis is whereby plants produce their own food. So now, how is this food produced? So this food is produced by the leaves, right? With the help of the phloem from the leaves, right? To the transport the rest of plant organs where they are used or stored. So that's basically what happens. Now look at these pictures here. Look at picture A. Tell me what's going on there. Or rather look at picture B because there are arrows there indicating what's going on. Transpiration of water. There's also the xylem and the phloem. Tell me what is the difference? What is the xylem? What is the phloem? What is the companion cell? What is the source cell? Right? So please look at that. Take your time. Pause here. I think we almost into 30 minutes now, so you can just pause, take a break, have your water, and then we'll be back. Right. Now, let's look at the mineral nutrition. Here we'll only look at the micro elements as well as the macro elements. So we're going to look at the differences between the two. Then now we're going to then zoom them down, then look at the functions of each nutrient or each element, then the deficiency symptoms of those elements, right? Now, differences between macro and micronutrients, right? Now, you need to understand that both of these are important. But now, for you to be able, like the first mark, if you are asked to mention the differences between these two, one thing that you need to note is that micro means small, right? And macro means large or big, right? So remember, microscope, microenvironment, right? Microorganisms, right? So those things, microscope is a tool that you use to look at organisms that cannot be seen with the naked eye, right? The microorganisms, of course, you cannot see them with your naked eye. You cannot see bacteria with your naked eye. You cannot see the virus with your naked eye. But with the macro organisms like myself, right? You can see me with your naked eye, right? If your eyes are functioning properly, right? And also, the macro environment would refer to the larger environment, the external environment. Right. Now, let's look at these two. So, the plants need both these elements. So, the minerals of the plants are divided into these two groups. So, if you ask the two groups of plant minerals, then it's macro and micro elements. So with macro, let's start with macro elements now. On your left-hand side of this diagram, the macro elements are elements that plants require in large quantities. So these nutrients are required in large quantities, right? And now, if there is any shortage of these, the plants will not grow well. They will not develop properly, right? So we divide these into primary and secondary, right? Then when it comes to the micro elements, right? These are elements that plants require in small quantities. They are also called trace elements. So most of them are toxic to plants. Some of these are elements, right? But we're going to touch on the important ones. Now, remember I had said with the macro elements, we have primary macro elements. So what are these? Now, the primary macro elements, if you can look on this diagram, they are colored in red. So these are elements that are needed in large quantities, and there is usually a shortage of them. That's why they are in red. You know where the danger is. Huh? You know where the danger is. Red for danger. So now, these include nitrogen, phosphorus, as well as potassium. So NPK. Then we've got the secondary macronutrients, right? As you can see, they're colored in gray. We've got calcium, magnesium, as well as sulfur, right? So now these are elements that are also needed in large quantities. However, they are usually enough in the soil. So they are there. They are usually like present. They are enough. We don't have to add more of them, right? Then in yellow, we've got the trace elements, the micro elements. So now let's touch on the macro elements, starting with the primary macro elements, right? The nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right? So these are the macro elements. Now remember, we're going to start now with the primary. We said these are needed in large quantities and there is usually a shortage of them. That is NPK. So if we look at nitrogen, let's start with nitrogen. Why is nitrogen important in the soil? What is the function? Why do we need that nitrogen there? So nitrogen forms part of all proteins and enzymes. It also forms part of chlorophyll that is important for photosynthesis. It also now helps with quick growth in plants. While it does that, that means it helps now with the seed and fruit production. And it also helps with leaf and fodder crop quality. So now, if you understand the functions, it helps you to clearly depict the deficiency symptoms. So if you know what the nitrogen does to the plant, then when there is lack of nitrogen, you will be able to understand why or how so. Let me not say why, how so. Now, if we are saying nitrogen forms part of the chlorophyll, which is basically important in the process of photosynthesis, right? Now, remember the chlorophyll is that green pigment. Then it means, that when there is a lack of nitrogen, then the plants will lack that green pigment. All right. So you will notice now that the plants are yellowish or they have a dull green color. And if we are saying that it helps with quick growth in plants, then it means now that if the plants lack nitrogen, then there won't be quick growth. The plants now will have small leaves. There will be dwarf plants, right? And also, if we are saying it helps with seed and fruit production. Now, what does that mean? It means now that if there is lack of nitrogen, then there will be small flowers or small fruits or poorly developed flowers and fruits. All right. So again, put this in mind. If you understand the functions, they help you to know the deficiency symptoms. Right? Now, let's look at phosphorus, the second primary macro element. Now, phosphorus is important for photosynthesis. Now, it is this phosphorus that helps us now to change solar energy into chemical energy, right? And it also forms part of the energy carrying molecule, which is the ATP. Now, remember on the last slide, on the last presentation, I asked you what is ATP, and I only had one person who responded to that, so it's fine, right? Now, phosphorus also helps with the rapid growth. Now, what does this mean? It means that if there is lack of phosphorus, there will be no growth or dwarf growth. There will be little growth, right? And now, in terms of color, if we're saying that phosphorus is important for photosynthesis and helps with the conversion of solar energy to chemical energy. So basically, that is the process of photosynthesis, right? Now, in terms of color, what will happen? The older leaves, you will notice them that they are purplish. So immediately, if the normal color of that plant is, or that leaf is green, and you see it purplish or purple, yazi mntase ikhona into of, there is the danger. You know what the danger is, ne? Now, if you see a yellow color on your leaves or a dull green color, no, ikhona into of, nitrogen is not there. Purple, phosphorus is lacking. Right? Now with potassium again. Now, potassium help to build proteins and help with photosynthesis as well, and it also improves the quality of fruit. So now what will happen if there is no phosphorus or there is a lack of phosphorus? What will happen? What do you think will happen? Think about that, right? So now what will happen now? In terms of color, the leaf edges and the tips of the leaves will become brown, right? And this will eventually spread throughout the entire leaf, and then it eventually falls off. So if you see your leaves falling off, or when they start becoming brown and then they fall off, understand that there is a lack of potassium there. That element K is not there. Okay, I get kumdase. So something is falling. Ne? Okay. Bonnie importance that K. I'm joking, guys. Okay. Now let's look at the secondary macro elements, calcium. Now think about this. We get our calcium from milk, for example, right? And why do we need calcium? We need calcium for strong bones, for as well as teeth, right? Now, this is the same thing. Now, what does a bone do? Now, bones help us with the structure. Now, this is the same with plants. So, calcium in plants help them to strengthen. So, calcium strengthens the plant. It also plays an important role in the wall of the plant, the cell wall or the cell structure, right? The plant structure, plant wall structure, right? So now what will happen if there is no calcium? Now remember, if you also lacking in calcium, then there will be problem with your bones. There will be problem with your teeth. So this is the same thing. So now with the leaves of the plants, if there is a lack of calcium, they will probably turn yellow and they will curl up. Now, remember, when we're talking about the vacuoles, we said the plant cell vacuoles are larger. And why? Because they help with the structure. They help with the plant structure. Animals' vacuoles are small because, hey, we've got bones that assist with the structure, right? And now, if there is a lack of calcium, there will also be dwarf growth because of the breakdown of the meristematic tissues in roots and stems. So there will be poor leaves here and poor root development. Then let's touch on magnesium. Magnesium is essential for photosynthesis. So this is the essential part of chlorophyll. Now remember, chlorophyll is that green pigment, right? So now if there is lack of this element, then it means that the leaves will turn yellow. But at the same time, this magnesium helps with activation of plant enzymes that are necessary for growth. So that means if there is no magnesium, then there will be dwarf growth. All right. Coming to sulfur. Sulfur as well assists with chlorophyll production. It forms part of the plant proteins. It also improves root growth and seed production. It also helps to resist cold. So now if there is no chlorophyll or there is lack of chlorophyll, then there will be decreased plant growth. The leaves will turn yellow. Then it starts then coming to the micro elements. Let's look at the micro elements, then we conclude our session. So this, guys, this is basically the last slide. If you are still listening to me, yo child, good for you. I know it's a long one, but you definitely need this. So with the micro elements, we're going to look at boron, copper, iron, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, as well as cobalt. But here's the thing here. I'm going to give you a task. I'm going to go through the functions, but I'm not going to go through the deficiency symptoms. I want you to go to write down the deficiency symptoms of each of these micro elements. Now, remember, I said to you, if you understand the function, then it makes it easy for you to know the deficiency symptom, right? So let's start with boron. So boron is essential for seed and fruit development, and it helps with the transportation of sugar. It assists with cell division, enzyme production, as well as the absorption and use of other nutrients. So now, take your time, listen to that, write down what you think the deficiency symptoms are. So what will be the symptoms if there is lack of boron in plants, right? Let's look at copper. Then copper is important for reproductive growth. And it also helps with root metabolism and the use of protein. So guys, please forgive my voice. A little bit fluish. So yeah, I guess it's the change of season, and I always suffer the most. I think I get flu like every month or every 3 months or every 2 months. Like it's hectic, guys. I can't even count. But hey, let's do this. We end this together, guys. Wish me well, but we're almost there. I've tried. Hey, I've tried. So let's look at. Oh, okay. I mentioned that copper is important for root metabolism and the use of protein, and also important for reproductive growth. So again, write the deficiency symptoms for that element. Then we've got iron, which is essential for chlorophyll formation. We've got manganese, which is important for building chloroplasts, and also forms part of the enzymes that are involved in breaking down the carbohydrates, right? Then we've got molybdenum, which helps with the use of the nitrogen. Then we've got zinc, which regulates growth, regulates sugar consumption, and also essential for transformation of lipids, carbohydrates, as well as proteins. Then the last one, We've got cobalt, which is important for legumes, and also necessary for nitrogen bonding, right? So now take your time, write the deficiency symptoms. You can also write on the comment section below, help others. And if you are still with me on this section, up until this minute now, please write on that section, comment section, guys. If there is anything else that you find difficulties in, let me know. Remember, I don't know where you are struggling, you know yourself, so make sure you share your struggles with me so that I can see where I can assist. Otherwise, that's it from me. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys being with me here. And hey, guys, let me tell you, I'm happy that we have reached to the end of our discussion in this session. I'm actually recording this for the second time. The first time I recorded, talked and talked, only to find out my input, what was muted. And but hey, remember, I'm a parent, so these things happen. So I don't know what had happened, but I'm happy that I got the strength to record this again, talk to you, and invite you to be with me. Once again, thank you so much for supporting the channel. The channel is growing, guys, because of you. Please make sure you share with other people, share some love. If you are with me up until this minute, please leave a heart below, like this video, and share with other people. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, please spread some love. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much, guys. I truly appreciate. Hey, I know I can talk the whole day, but yeah, that's what I love doing. Your support, guys, truly pushes me to continue doing what I love the most. I love teaching. I don't care who says what. I love training other people. I enjoy sharing knowledge with other people. The little that I know, the little that I have, that's what I enjoy doing. So, yeah, thank you so much, guys. Until next time.